So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm going to frustrate quite a lot of you because originally I thought the speech was for a bit longer time. I've been requested to give our lesson learns from Smart Grid. So I titled my presentation Top 15 Lessons and 10 Cool Innovations which we can learn from the world on Smart Grids. And among them, you'll see some of them are in India. So that's going to be the interesting part. The reason why I'm saying it's going to be frustrating, because if you divide the 25 slides by 10 minutes, that's going to be extremely fast. So I'm just going to give you a snapshot, few comments about these, and if you need any further detail or information, feel free to send me an email or connect with our local representative here in India. So first of all, a bit of publicity. We have changed. You probably heard that GE did acquire the energy activity of Alstom. And as a consequence, they also acquired the grid activity. So now we are GE Grid, which is a joint venture between Alstom and GE. We are $5 billion US company worldwide. Our headquarters is in Paris. I'm the head of strategy and innovation for that group. And I'm coming from the what I would call Alstom Grid legacy side, which I think is a sign of GE wanting to leverage and capitalize on what has been historically developed out of the Alstom side. I'm saying this because in India, Alstom is of course well known for delivering a lot of SCADA and technology to PGCIL and company like Tata Power and so on. So what I'm going to talk today about is combining these views. We all know what are the challenges on grid. I think this was explained very well. So first lessons. Lesson one, experience does matters. You don't come in a utility and change everything or interject a startup software as easy as what it can be in the private sector. The reason behind is the utility is a very complex business. There is very complex IT behind. And what we've seen actually Smart Grid to be almost 30 years old, and it's nothing more than waves of evolution of business model for utilities, which are our customers, going through various phases of looking at grid resiliency or establishing real-time markets, integrating renewables, creating demand response. By the way, demand response is now a bit obsolete. I would call it DRMS. I'm going to talk about it later. And then now it's all about smart city and microgrids. So what we see basically is we see this environment progressively migrating through these phases. And so that's why we are an historical player into that, and we do our best to capture that innovation. Lesson two, so these are few key projects which we have in the world, and just the lesson here is India is definitely the champion league of smart grid development, and we do things with PGCIL right now, which have never been done everywhere else in the world. I was yesterday in their knowledge center. I'm very keen to invite a large grid utility in India to see what happens here. I find this unique. And I could say the same with Tata Power in Delhi in all what has been done and was introduced in the previous presentation. So yes, smart grid is maybe to a certain extent new in some areas, but in some other areas, I do see smart grids very well developed already and fast developing. So first lesson on drivers. Lesson three. There is a fast business model turnaround around DER integration. So what is a DER is not only renewable. We talked this morning about renewable, but it's also storage, demand response, electrical vehicle. And as a reason of all this cost of supplying this DER being now very cheap as compared to the base load generation existing in the utility, this turns around the business model of the utility. So there is an acceleration factor here. I was in the smart grid for the last 10 years. And I see a significant acceleration on the last year and a half, where we do see new business model coming in. Of course, Solar City is a very known one, IKEA, Google, and so on. So that's really an acceleration here. Lesson four, smart grids come by pockets. So pockets means area of the grid where you have constraints, means particularly cities where you put electrical vehicles and so on. So smart grid does not come with smart meter deployment strategy. It's the other way. It comes with deployment pocket, and then inside this deployment pocket, you put the smart meter to enable some new services. So I think that's one of the lessons which you can learn from outside world is don't go into too rigid deployment, but really think into the sweet spot where you want to put these, into the pocket which you want to equip, which we call by the way, microgrids. Lesson 5, grid resiliency and security has become the core of future utility business model. We heard this morning, for the grid to withstand in front of the customer, it must supply a new service, which is security. And so that's a lot of investment coming in this area. So around New York in the US, all the revolution is not only about renewable integration, but primarily rethinking how you're going to secure some area of New York with redesigning the architecture of the system, changing controls, and so on. So of course, being GE, we are at the center of several of these discussions here. And there is actually a large discussion on regulation as well. Lesson 6, prosumer IoT connectivity is absolutely key. So here I call it prosumer IoT connectivity. So smart meter is one device, but that means all the devices around it. That means connectivity down to the SCADA. I'm very happy of the discussion which was made here. I'm talking IT is one thing, but the core of smart grid is really the SCADA and real-time platform environment. And to make your consumer looking at the data, you need data with change. You cannot get data once a day. To excite him, to get him happy, he needs to know when things change into his behaviors and environment. So real-time connectivity, so OT is absolutely key into that environment. Lesson 7, it requires complex cost-benefit analysis and regulation. So we must live in an environment where we invent the model and the regulation in the same time. So that requires to have a bit of perspective and discussion with regulators for them to think and rethink their way of regulating. So I would say regulators' jobs 5 years ago was an easy job. It becomes an headache to be a regulator now. It's extremely complex. But if we don't put smart regulation, smart grid will never come. So here there was a paper which was produced by the European Commission last 6 months. We've been very active into that. That offers a very good summary of how we can manage regulation around flexibility, pricing, and so on. Lesson 8, grid flexibility is the core of a lot of the investment which are made there. And we see it in California, we see it in New York, we see it in Europe. And that's really the core KPI, which I think drive a lot of these investments. A few lessons on smart grid architecture. Lesson 9, universal set of standards exists.
Sorry, I thought this was on vibrant. Sorry.
Okay. That's not the end of my speech then. Okay.
But it is a 2-minute warning.
This is a 2-minute warning, so I'll skip some slides then. Okay.
We're flexible.
You're hard for a guy coming from Paris, but okay, that's fine. A universal set of standards, they exist. So if you have vendors coming to you saying they do not exist, that simply means they do not understand your business. So please use standard, they exist. In the OT space, they are called SIM. In the automation, they are called 61850, and this is the way forward. So I agree with what was said about interoperability and so on, but standards do exist, so we simply have to use them. Lesson 10, it's becoming a very complex end-to-end architecture, and all the more as you want to connect it with the cloud. So you need to rethink your entire IT-OT architecture. I think there is plenty of speech around here. And interoperability is key. So because we were a bit tired with hearing that, we decided to build our own interoperability platform, which we start to supply to utilities if they want to test interoperability into their backyard and show how flexible we can be into developing interoperability across this platform. We have this first reference with Southern California Edison, SCE, which is now using that tool for trying out interoperability and validating their smart inverters and so on. Lesson 11, real-time connectivity is key. I'm very happy of what I've seen in this presentation before. Telecom's way of what was presented is the right way of doing it. Don't look at what has been made in US and Europe so far. I think there were trials. I think we hit a lot of limitation on the current AMI comms technology for going into real-time. So you really need to rethink the way you do AMI 2.0 comms. And I think here in India, you do have very strong skills to be able to do that. From using optical fiber down to using pole and carrier or wireless, depending on where you are. So a single technology will not fit everything. That does not exist. Lesson 12, balancing market are absolutely essential, so you need to think the regulation as well. Lesson 13, take care of cybersecurity. I'm just going to advise you to check what happened in Ukraine 3 weeks ago. That's very worrying. So we'll have to enter in a new area for cybersecurity.
And we have more sessions on cybersecurity at ISGW,
I
specifically.
was not invited to that session, so
You're always invited,
I just
sir.
put into that.
Sir, you're always invited.
Lesson 14, GIS is becoming the wealth of the utility moving forward. Getting good GIS data is going to allow you to develop a lot of new business model around it, and precisely to derive value proposition for smart cities. We see this happening in US and Europe right now, so we'll see utility developing new business out of their GIS data. Very important GIS. Lesson 15, we are going to evolve in a new world. So we are going to evolve in a world of data and apps. So I'm now called these smart city apps, and I'm going to bring, with the support of GE Industrial Internet, an app store for utility for them to be able to exchange their apps, industrial app store, and that's going to be the future of the utility. So there is no reason why the utility could not also go into that domain as what the Apple and the Google and the GAFA have invented. We want our future SCADA to be actually a SCADA of app stores. And we have done R&D for that. Now I will continue and accelerate more and more. Few innovation, grid stability and wide area monitoring, PMU's deployments. The best ever project in terms of size and whatsoever is now, the best reference is now in India with URTDSM. We are currently into the implementation phase, and we are also moving into wide area control, down to controlling HVDC link, controlling generator governors out of the phasor measurement data. So a very interesting project in the UK, particular. So 2 projects. Lesson 2, digitalization of the substation. So the substation is not a dummy part of the grid. It's actually, it has to become at least as smart as a smart meter, and I would say even much smarter. It has to have its own digital twin. That means it has to have its own software into it for being able to do various kind of functions and basically flow more renewable during period of time of the day. So we have invented a new concept in France with the transmission grid operator, RTE, which is called Digital Substation, which is very interesting. Again, PGCIL already have 2 trials with Digital Substation, I think, in India. So I think it's showing the way here. Lesson 3, integration of OMS-DMS, very important. So here we are very honored to be part of the HPSCB project. I apologize, I'm French, so this is a long Indian name, but we are part of the 10th, I would say, final smart grids project, working very closely with the State Electricity Board for trying out few key concepts around, I would say, advanced power applications, DMS and OMS, to move to the next smart grid SCADA step. I must say it's very interesting because what the team here is doing is taking best of Florida Power and Light and Alabama Power, putting it straight into India, but also tuning it a bit because we understand the business model here is a bit different. Peak load management and all that kind of things are done different in India. So there are a specificity there.
If you could please, yeah.
Acceleration.
Yes, please.
Integration, GIS-OMS-DMS. So I'm not going to speak about it. I think the chairman of Tata Power just before spoke about that project, very successful project. I think this is the core of establishing a smart grid SCADA. Integration of DER. So connecting DER means that, connecting consumers. So DER behind the consumer and storage and everything which goes behind the consumer. So my suggestion is don't go with DR, go straight with DR. If you go with DR, you're going to already invest in an old technology. DER embeds DR, okay? Then another example is power restoration outage management, MicroGrid Energy Management as a service, new service model for utility, multifunction battery inverter, community energy management for city, integrated smart city planning. You see we have so many smart city apps ready to come in the App Store, which we'll be very happy to explain further to Indian utilities. So my message in conclusion is first, India is in the top league, and you do have your smart apps already ready. I think what is now very interesting is tap into the new ones, which are the DER and the smart city, and of course we'll be very happy to help here. Thank you very much.